That was quite the shot. Four incredibly impactful, powerful women all standing together, representing some of the best that DC has to offer. Let's give it up for Mayor Bowser one more time. We're in the home stretch here. Our final panel is a perfect way to close out the day with a discussion about economic development, my personal favorite topic as a Business Journal employee. You can read more online. Our moderator is Chinyere Hubbard, President and CEO of the DC Chamber of Commerce. Please help me welcome Chinyere back out onto stage.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is a delight to be here. I would love to bring out my panelists. Barbara Mullinex, thank you, for Perkins Eastman. Kirtan Mehta from Washington Commanders. And Marissa McInnes from Verizon. Thank you. Happy Earth Day. Okay, so we just heard inspiring remarks from the mayor. We can be pro-growth and pro-climate. And at the DC Chamber, we are really focused on growing the economy, growing our businesses, attracting more businesses to Washington, DC, and attracting residents to be the best place to live, work, and build a business. So this day is really turning out to be quite a celebration. We got the green memo, Marissa, with the mayor, so great. And we've heard a lot today, yes. We've heard a lot today about the power of partnerships, about collaboration, and the interconnected ways that DC is becoming more affordable and resilient. Housing and clean energy solutions are just two of them. Both are driving job creation in the economy. And the DC Chamber is proud to be the leading advocate for businesses in Washington, DC. We've been around for nearly 88 years and represent businesses of all sizes to create a thriving city. And just like Groundswell and DC Green Bank, thank you to our co-hosts and DC Green Bank and Howard Theater for hosting us today. We work across all 8 wards. So I'm excited to be here with 3 DC Chamber members who are representing various sectors of the businesses that really showcase the depth and breadth of our incredible city and DC's economy. So Marissa McInnes, you are the Senior Director of Global Sustainability and Small Business at Verizon, and Kirtan Mehta is the Vice President of Public Affairs at the Washington Commanders, and Barbara Mullinex is the Principal at Perkins Eastman. So we'll take about 30 seconds and give a little bit of background about who you are and what you do.
Sure, thank you so much for having me. It's a great place to be on Earth Day. So Marissa and I lead the global sustainability for Verizon. We have obviously a global footprint. We also have a very focused effort right now on both reducing emissions from our network and working on building community resilience through both network resilience, disaster resilience, and small business resilience. So I'm excited to talk about that too. Before this, I had about 20 years in the federal government, and I live in Ward 5, so married in 20 years.
Great, DC resident. Okay, Kirtan.
Thanks, and thanks to everyone for having me here. Really appreciate it. I'm Kirtan Mehta, as Chinyere said. I'm the head of public relations and government affairs at the Washington Commanders. I've been there about 2 years, almost literally to the day I started under the new ownership of Josh Harris. And my entire focus until about September of last year was the new stadium effort in terms of getting the federal approval for the land, which the mayor was obviously critical in getting, then working with the mayor on a landmark deal and then passing it through the council. And now we're excited to have this small project that's going to be a big deal. We're working with Barbara here to make it such an amazing opportunity for Washington, D.C. Before that, I worked in federal politics as well. I worked for a couple senators, a governor, and some private sector jobs. Thanks.
Great. Barbara.
Hi, good morning and happy Earth Day. We started off the day at the office with a Earth Day breakfast, so we're full events for Earth Week. I'm an architect here in the District of Columbia. I've never worked for the federal government. But over the course of my career, I've been involved in 3 really transformative projects. The first was the Homeland Security headquarters. And I remember as a young girl and Eleanor Holmes Norton being so passionate about what Homeland Security and that new metro station would do for that part of transforming that part of DC. I was kind of in the, yeah, you think so? But like I've lived long enough now to see how these projects can change our city. I was lucky enough to get to work on the wharf, and now with the commanders in Kearton at the 180-acre RFK site. And it's also interesting to see how the resilience and sustainability conversation for these large developments has really changed over the last 35 years.
Great. So Marissa, we'll start with you. The DC Chamber has been a long champion of a thriving business environment and a sustainable city are not competing goals, but really the same goal. And at the Chamber, we know how companies invest in clean energy, and supply chain equity really speaks to the health and competitiveness of our local economy. Can you talk about how Verizon is making its operations more sustainable through renewable energy investment, and how cities like DC benefit from that commitment? And then, kind of a two-part, we also love to hear about Verizon's Prime Partners program and the work you're doing to strengthen your supplier relationships.
Great. Okay, so first, I know my role is split in two, so it's like one half of my brain is, but there's a lot of intersection there. So the first half in terms of sustainability and what we're doing with our resilient network. So you know that if you're a Verizon customer, thank you so much for being a Verizon customer. If you're not, you're probably still using our networks in a lot of places. And even just driving around DC, you can see that big CO right next to the Capitol, right? There's a lot of, that's Verizon. So our network footprint is very vast, as you can imagine. We not only really strive to be the most reliable network, but we want to be the most sustainable network. So we're working to make our networks more energy efficient. Year over year, we're making that about 17% more efficient, our network, even as the energy demand increases. That's an average across the nation. And in terms of renewable energy, we are one of the largest purchasers of renewable energy, definitely in the telco space, but overall in terms of industry. In November of last year, we fully allocated our last $1 billion green bond fund, which is through all the purchasing of solar and wind power throughout the U.S., including a lot of places in our core, we call it our ILAC, our core place, which is, the Boswash, the Northeast Corridor, where we have so much of our infrastructure. So we're really working to make 100% of our operations for all of our network powered by renewable energy by 2030, and we are about 61% there officially. So we are making great progress. So we're really looking right now at increased energy demand, increased usage, how we can continue to both reduce emissions and keep that network reliability that we provide to our customers, especially in the DC area. For the small business side and the supplier work that we're doing with our Prime and our small business suppliers, last year we announced, we made a big announcement to spend $5 billion of our own supplier spend. So that's like, think about Verizon, we have thousands of suppliers around the globe, but we committed to spending $5 billion of that on small businesses. Small businesses are, you all know, are the heart of the economy. They make up 99% of all businesses. And when you tap into small businesses, not only does it make you, you're pouring into the local economy, but you're also making your supply chain more resilient. I was in the supply chain org at Verizon. During COVID, that was a wake-up call for everyone. We had to have those local suppliers. We had to have those local businesses. And so what we're doing is actually creating a new pipeline for small businesses to get educated, to build on the Small Business Digital Ready curriculum that we have, and then to actually get trained with us, holding their hands and partnering them with other prime suppliers so that they are contract ready, not only for Verizon, but for any large corporation that or business that they could partner with, especially in the DC area.
Yeah. Thank you, Marissa, for that. And Barbara, you're working on, well, you've been on this sustainable journey for many years, and even though you don't look a day over 30, but yes, you are working on an equally large scale, but in a physical way. And you are designing many projects for the future of the city, from the wharf, RFK redevelopment, as we've referenced before. And I imagine resilience is really baked into every decision from the start. So how do you think about resilience as a design from an infrastructure perspective when you're planning? And what does that look like in on major DC, as a practice on major DC projects?
Yeah, resilience is a wide-ranging topic. You know, at the wharf, one of the most important things to do was to make sure that that area of the waterfront was protected from the 100-year floodplain. We have a 700,000-gallon stormwater tank cistern that is used to water the plants and the 400,000 square feet of green roof on the top. But it's also resilient in the way that when you're at the wharf, I think CVS is the only national chain. Mm-hmm. It was very much designed for small and local business owners to have a place to thrive and benefit from the great environment. So one of the things we weren't able to achieve at the wharf, we had hoped for a cogen, which what that means is that the utility companies have to work together. And that's not something that they have been really agile at doing, but they're getting better. So now that we are at the wharf, I mean at RFK, RFK is a very big site. I think probably 2/3 of it is in the 100-year floodplain. That has big impacts for building. It has big impacts for how you deal with the riparian area. But we have the chance from a climate perspective to restore that part of the Anacostia River. We have the ability to deal with the floodplain. One of the fundamental decisions that we made at the start of the master planning process was to keep all the infrastructure you can. Infrastructure is, you know you need it, you can't see it, and it's really expensive. So the less of it that you have to rebuild and the more of it you can reuse and work around. So the first project that's going to start at RFK is relocating a sewer line that's around the foot of the stadium. That is so not sexy. But it has to move from there to out under C and Constitution to retain sewer access for the community. It costs $50 million. It is not something anybody's going to see or care about, except, you know, when you put water down the sink.
A little bit.
So I think there's been such a big focus on on retaining and saving infrastructure. That's the most sustainable thing you can do, is use something you already have or a building that's already built. But thinking more into the future, the city has just released an RFP for an energy master plan to look at microgrids, to look at is there a heat retraction from this ginormous 30-foot sewer line that cuts diagonally through the site, you know, battery storage, you know, what are some really inventive, creative, forward-thinking investments that the city can make in energy? And this is where it's been really awesome to see how the utility companies have come together to talk about some of these topics, because they require gas, electricity, and water, and connectivity. So it's been really interesting.
And so while, Barbara, you've been working on the bones of that project and that stadium, Kirtan, your organization is really ready to bring it to life. And we worked very closely last year on making sure that this project was really brought to life. And so what does resilience mean for you on this side of the equation, and how DC is increasingly becoming a destination for sports and entertainment? So can you talk a little bit about how resilience is part of that fan experience and the city's future?
Thank you. Yeah, and let me start with the second part of that question, which is the DC is becoming a destination for sports. I mean, this is one of a handful of cities in the country where all the major sports franchises by 2030 will be within the city's limits, and that is a real testament to Mayor Bowser and her predecessors for making that a reality. So that's very exciting. It does come with a lot of needs, of course, and to answer your question, resiliency has to be top of mind, because when you turn on that stadium, that's going to take a lot of power. It's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be a lot of disruption to the area around it. What was otherwise empty parking lots and a crumbling stadium for years is now going to be extremely different. So for that to be sustainable, for that to be resilient, means you have to be mindful, as Barbara put it, from the front end to make that happen. One of the commitments that the team made as part of the deal with the city was that we committed to having a goal to reach LEED Platinum certification for both the construction of the stadium and the operation thereof. And that's something that no other stadium in the entire country currently has. So that will be a feature, a huge feature for what we're trying to do. We're trying to be the most sustainable stadium, not just in the country, but in the world, and that requires thinking about these important points from the outset, starting with stormwater drains and moving all the way up to the roof and the way that the heat's trapped in there, and people with their one of the things that just side note that we are working on is how is it that you put composting in stadiums, so that when people throw away food, it's something that you're able to actually reuse, as opposed to it going in the trash that you always see at other stadiums. So things like that you have to start from the beginning.
And sports and entertainment, what I love about this conversation too is that everyone at the table is really working on the same problem, just from a different angle. And sports and entertainment really do more than just bring us all together. They power jobs and opportunity and growth. So Kirtan, we're going to start with you. How do you think city leaders can make decisions that really balance bold economic development with well-being and affordability for residents who call DC home?
Yeah, I actually think those things go together. Yes, there is some balancing that has to happen, but I think strong economic development allows you to meet the needs of the residents that you have, as long as you're mindful of that from the outset. But to me, they're not contradictory, and the RFK site, I think, will be a great example of that. If you look at Nats Ballpark, for example, the Navy Yard was nothing for a very long time. Nats Ballpark came, and now if you go there, it's this bustling center that's there not just on game days, but every day. We want to create a very similar situation with 180 acres in Ward 7, where the stadium's going to reside. And yes, you have to be mindful about affordable housing. You have to be mindful about sustainability. You have to be mindful about jobs and workforce training. But all those things work together to actually make the stadium and the surrounding area work. So if you focus on it from the beginning, that's how you drive economic development.
And from Verizon's perspective, where do you see how we can balance bold economic development with well-being and affordability for residents?
Yeah, so I think I totally agree, Kirtan. We're working on the same problems from different perspectives, and I love that part of my work. We love working with the NFL as a Verizon. I was in Pittsburgh yesterday for the NFL draft event, and thinking about that, not only were we actively planting trees in historically uninvested communities there in Pittsburgh on the ground. My shoulders are killing me today from doing that. But we were also working with the network techs there and trying to get everything connected and ready to go at the stadium for draft day tomorrow. So I think, and I can be, and my teams can be involved in all of those topics, because you're talking about, at the end of the day, what's best for not only ultimately what's best for the customer from a Verizon standpoint, and the community, and those go hand in hand. So when I'm looking at something where I can see, there are lots of small businesses that actually provide or help fulfill a need for us in our supply chain, whether it's network construction or marketing that we need in specific areas, that is a capability that not only helps Verizon as a business, but as the customers and the local economy as well. So I really like to think of it as, where are there opportunities to have a win-win-win for all, and also to work with our corporate and non-corporate partners, because I think once you have, I'm so excited about the stadium, but I love the concept of bringing everyone to the table and talking about it from like a stakeholder and partner example. It's always going to have the best solution there.
And Barbara, from your perspective, how can city leadership really turn potential into something that works for all DC residents?
I think, I'm at a weird intersection where sometimes I see architects and developers see the unintended consequences of really great ideas. And I think a lot of times we kind of use a one-size-fits-all, and one size doesn't necessarily fit all. You know, the sustainability plan, the DC sustainability plan that Mayor Gray put forward, that we're still working toward, has a lot of really great things in it. And we are recognized as one of the most energy efficient, most resilient, most sustainable cities as a leader nationally and internationally in sustainability. But I also see how hard it is with the DC Energy Code to put a grocery store in a building because they take so much refrigeration. So sometimes I think we all, as residents, as voters, as consumers, as DC government, have to be a little sharper about as I say, unintended consequences. We want grocery stores and we want an energy code. So how do we make both of those? It's an and, not an or.
And that's a great point. DC Chamber represents 1,000 members, many of whom are small businesses. And so helping DC become energy efficient and sustainable really goes hand in hand. We talk about clean energy retrofits and green construction, climate smart infrastructure. And so many of these investments really only live up to their promise if they create real pathways to jobs, to employment, to economic participation. And so what role does job training and workforce development play in building this resilient DC that we've been talking about all this morning? And I could start with anyone.
Go here.
Go ahead.
So one thing that I've really come across the last 6 months to a year, specifically in terms of job training development, excuse me, frog in my throat, but is, you know, we are dealing with all these small businesses that have incredible skills, incredible capabilities. They don't want to do a sustainability, EcoVadis scoring assessment that they have to do for larger corporations. There's so much kind of like almost corporate bureaucratic kind of red tape that they have to go through for the onboarding process. And so one of the things that we have been doing in my team at Verizon is going out to all of the chambers, and I would love to work with your chamber even more, and really on the job, in-person training, and also helping small businesses navigate all of these like paperwork and bureaucratic hurdles that they have to go through, and really finding alternatives to that too. And so Verizon is looking at, quicker payment terms, shorter indemnification, and lessening the hurdles for small businesses to actually be able to have them on board in a more realistic timeline, because small businesses can't do all the things that big businesses can. And so that's where a lot of our focus has been from the training perspective.
Kirtan, from your perspective for job training.
Thanks. We are obviously already mindful about this kind of thing for the vendors that we currently use, both in Maryland, but also in Virginia, and soon to be, of course, in DC. The draft is a great example. As many of you know, DC will be hosting the NFL draft next year, which is really exciting. Almost 1 million people on the mall, and hopefully more than that. But it requires a lot of vendors. Yeah, it's wild. Of course, a lot of vendors, obviously, that we're working with today and trying to get them trained up to be ready for 2027 draft. Now, there's another, as I mentioned, small project that we're working on. It's $3.7 billion, almost $4 billion to build the stadium, of which the team is putting in about $2.7 billion. And by the way, it has to be ready by 2030 for a lot of reasons, but it just has to be ready by 2030. So that requires a lot of work. That means it's going to be the biggest CBE project in the district's history. It's going to be the biggest union project in DC's history, largest women-owned affiliated project in DC history. Like all of these categories are incredibly important, then they have to come together, because otherwise we won't be able to build and won't be ready by 2030. So what do you have to do? You have to start workforce training yesterday to make sure that the pipeline is ready for when the shovels are actually hitting the ground, which, by the way, is spring of 2027. So we're, a little under the gun, but it's an exciting and really important opportunity, because this is a chance to revamp the district's entire workforce and small businesses, so like everyone can benefit from this.
I know there's been some talk about how construction jobs aren't good jobs, or that persists. My son is a project manager at a construction company, so just saying. But my favorite factoid of recent is an electrical foreman on a data center job, the head electrician, makes $350,000 a year. Wow. So construction jobs are good jobs.
Yes, they are, yes. And I know we have a lot of business owners here in the audience. Any chamber members in the audience, please raise your hand. All right, great. Shout out to our chamber members. And if you're not, there's a table back there where you can join the chamber. My shameless plug. But how can we incentivize, and Barbara, I'll start with you, more businesses to proactively adopt features like Howard Theater's solar panels or other energy efficient features?
Again, from my perspective, when LEED started to be a thing, and there was desire to be LEED certified, we would talk to our law firm clients and say, do you want your project to be LEED certified? And they said, no, that's a waste of money. And then they went to the best colleges, the best law schools in the United States, and they asked their, the young people that they were trying to recruit, and try to, please come to our law firm as opposed to somebody else's law firm. And they said, what is your sustainability policy? Are you going to be LEED certified? And I think that it's from the young people, and if you have your head in the sand, things like material health, these issues of resilience and sustainability, this idea that, of course you compost. I'm sure Josh Harris doesn't compost. But people who go to the stadium want to. And so it's really, I kind of think, almost a bottom up from the enthusiasm and energy of people who are going to inherit this planet after us to get us to be bold.
Marissa, do you want to answer that question as well? How we can incentivize more businesses to proactively adopt sustainable features?
I think that sustainability features are money-making features for businesses. I really think of them as, I joke with my teams about, we really need to do great work to kind of like work ourselves out of a job because we want sustainability to be, this isn't how we build a sustainable building. This is just how we build a building because that's how we do things in the most smart way from the business smart perspective. And so it's really, I work with our sourcing teams at Verizon from a global perspective, and we say, hey, these are what we're looking for. This is the requirements. They've got to be this certain amount of a sustainability in their plans. They've got to, all of those requirements up front in the planning process for both that and small business requirements. And that's where you get all of that. So you have like the great RFPs that are coming out, and we get to connect those with small businesses and others in our supply chain. But we say, like, as part of that, you have to already be at this level. And if you're not, we can help you get there. Through hand-holding and training, that we are there with you to be more sustainable. So I just think that that's like the best, that's how I come to my executives and say, hey, ROI on this makes total sense. There's no kind of paying more for a sustainable premium when you think about the long-term business case for what we do.
I want to give a shout out to the DC government and the mayor for leading the way in sustainability. We were proud to have designed the two first net zero schools, public schools, Banneker and Lewis. And as a result of that, and as a result of the emphasis that DC has put on solving these, how do you get to net zero? What does that mean? What are the tools? What are the tricks? It's not just PVs. Right. It's a whole basket of things. We were recently able to make the Melzer Center at AU, their sports center, net zero. So for small businesses, a lot of the work that the city is doing in taking the lead on these public projects paves the way for small businesses who are doing innovations in insulation and all these kinds of things, gives them a platform, gets them started so that then they can go into the non-governmental sector and provide these sustainability activities for small businesses and local people.
Yeah, great. And outside of the RFK redevelopment project and the Commander Stadium, Kirtan, is there a project or initiative that you feel has made a real difference?
Yes, certainly. I pointed out the Nats ballpark before, what that's really done for Navy Yard, but I think we could probably list 50 different projects. Going back to your last question, I think one of the, and Barbara basically said this, is one of the things is the city is progressive and has values that are progressive that have to be married with practicality at times. But that, I think, is a carrot and less of a stick for how businesses should try to get their customers to come out because they're offering something that not everyone can offer. I think that's a huge differentiator for us. And there are various projects in this city that I think serve as examples, and we draw upon them as we're trying to figure out how to build the stadium itself. And that, I think, is what I think all businesses should want to do.
We have a few minutes for questions from the audience. Any questions? Yes.
Love this panel. Dr. Kat Schreier with Water Citizen. We do water pitch to water startup matching extravaganza, and we're trying to develop a water technology innovation center to look at the water-related issues for all of these areas, from turf and buildings and advanced communications technologies. There's an assumption with water startups that it's all about public research at public universities and federal labs that go to public utilities, when there's so many water issues tied into everything else that's happening in the private sector. If we are able to, as we continue with water pitch and are looking for reverse pitches, as we hopefully get a technology innovation center for water in DC, would we be able to count on some of the private industries in the area to work with our startups, to provide pilot area projects, and just be able to help develop these technologies that are not necessarily through the public agencies?
No, I mean, we should definitely connect after this. Very interested, and I think my background previous to Verizon was with water resilience from a watershed perspective. So, I mean, anything that we live in a riparian zone, right? But if you go out west, we have I travel a lot out west for customer meetings and client meetings, and that is number one concern for them, is not only the network reliability, but and climate impacts, but that water resilience and capability to make sure it's there. So we work with a lot of the utility companies out there, but definitely I think that's something that maybe wasn't as prevalent in telcos per se, but we are all working together right now, and really it might not be material in what we report, but we are definitely thinking about it. And also Verizon is currently the chair of, it's called GESI, G-E-S-I, the Global Enabling Sustainability Initiative. So we can work pretty competitively with other companies across the planet to kind of work on these problems, and water is one of the big ones we're working on now.
Well, I think, obviously the RFK site is a great opportunity and a kind of a laboratory for how do you restore a really vibrant waterfront that was basically destroyed. And what I think is really important about RFK is how it literally connects up to the Arboretum, the botanical gardens. It obviously flows into the Potomac and the Chesapeake Bay watershed, but the restoration of that, from public swimming to letting people get out on the water, is all kind of part of of what we're trying to do, as well as not keeping the stormwater from continually sifting into and clogging up the Anacostia. So using smart technologies to deal with stormwater on the site, all of that stuff is really important.
Thank you, Barbara, for that. Any other questions from the audience? We have time for one more. Or any final thoughts from our panel? Mm-hmm.
I know I was speaking a lot from the global perspective, but I really think the local here is so important from big corporations like Verizon. Just a couple of weeks ago, we work with Casey Trees a lot, and they also are a block away from my house in Brookland. But I drag my kids to all these plantings that we do for Verizon, and just seeing, not only are they thinking about, obviously tree planting is beneficial, but we're really focusing on where can that resilience benefit be most effective in terms of canopy cover and also water erosion control, and from a community perspective. And that has really kind of, that idea is catching on more and more, I think, specifically in the corporate community of think local and how we can build that community resilience. And that is like the easiest way to kind of build that not only customer base, but, future customer base. So really appreciate it. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that comment. Kirtan, any final thoughts?
Well, we're going to plant so many trees there on this side. No, on a serious note, I mean, through this process, we learned and were told by the community how Kingman Island is a huge heat island. And, on a serious note, planting trees is critical, not just for the fact that we don't want it to be a heat island, but also like for the functioning of the stadium itself. That's a critical piece. So all these components of sustainability, I think, have to be, as I said, and Barbara's really doing a lot of work on this, planned from the very beginning so that we're not, panicking. We're getting closer to that. I mean, water, just going back to that question, before this job, I worked for a U.S. Senator from Colorado, and one of the issues that we worked on, as you can imagine, is the Colorado River and how that's a real problem at the lower basin. And one takeaway I really had from that was that the problem was completely ignored until it became an actual crisis. And that, I think, is something that we always want to get in front of when it comes to sustainability issues.
Yeah. Proactivity is so important when it comes to sustainability. And Barbara, final thought?
This may be obvious, but Pepco doesn't make energy. They buy energy on the open market, and they compete with the region for energy. And so the only way to make our energy costs go down is to find out ways to be more sustainable, to be more net zero, and to create our own energy. So you have to balance that with the current issues we have regarding a little bump in the economic road for the district, but you've got to keep your eye on that horizon because that's the only way to get there.
And go on that solar coaster, which I just learned today. So thank you, Marissa, Kirtan, and Barbara. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really just want to start by thanking Chineri for your leadership with the DC Chamber. Our partnership is paramount, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. We are in our final stretch, everyone, so thank you for joining us today. I have a few final thank yous before I introduce our board chair. I want to thank our partners. The Chamber and Groundswell have really been the ones to help make this all come to light, and it's because of their incredible teams and their ability to really make sure we have platforms to tell this story that we were here and able to come together with the stories we shared today. I want to also thank board members that are present. We also have a board meeting soon, so glad to have you join us today. A special shout out to Tricia Miller, former CEO of the DC Green Bank. You sowed a lot of seeds and they are flourishing, so thank you for your leadership and your contributions, Tricia. We also have a leader, Curtis is with us from NYSEG. It is the DC Green Bank equivalent in New York City. And, we need one another. So thank you for your leadership as well. If I did not call you out, charge it to my mind and not my heart. I would like to pivot to introducing Ed Hubbard, who does this work in real life every single day. Ed serves as the general counsel for the Renewable Fuels Association, obviously a lawyer by training, has made many contributions to Capitol Hill and also private practice. When we talk about the power of partnership, you need that with your board. They are a bolster to me. They also are guardrail. So it's really helpful to make sure that you can have the type of relationship where the difficult conversations and the accountability